Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 14th of September. We follow the story as it unfolds around Paul and his companions. Remember, Luke is now with them because he's referencing the personal pronoun of we and us. And they are in a town. They have encountered a godly woman. Lydia led her to faith. And we read today that one day, while going down to the river to meet with the new Christians and anyone else that would want to listen, they were met by a slave girl who had a spirit. And this spirit permitted her somehow or supposedly to predict the future. And she would walk after Paul day after day, shouting out loudly, these are servants of the God Most High. And she did this perpetually, non-stop, until the point was reached where Paul was troubled in his spirit, and he turned around and he addressed the spirit in this young girl and told the spirit to leave, which it did. And the owners of the slave girl had been making money by renting her out, as it were, so that she could predict the future. There's no clear, well, there actually is, but at first glance, there's no clear indication if this was a demonic spirit or some other form of, can we say, a good spirit, because it's not quickly identified. But there are many clues that are given, one of which is that this spirit references Jesus and Yahweh as God Most High. And interestingly, this is not a term that is used by the early Christian church. It is a term that is used almost exclusively by those who had a demonic spirit. That was their way of describing Jesus. They presumably just didn't want to use his name, so they gave him this more generic description, God Most High. And what's interesting is that there's no indication that Paul and his companions were in any way breaking the peace. They were quietly sitting at the place of prayer and talking to those who wanted to listen. No street evangelism, standing in the corner and making any form of noise or disruption. Yet the slave girl was shouting after Paul and the companions. But when the spirit in the slave girl has been cast out, the owners rush off to the magistrates, agitate the crowd, and they accuse Paul and the companions of making a noise, of causing uproar in the city. And on the one hand, that's of course patently false, and it was the slave girl who was doing it, but somehow that's permitted. So it's interesting how when we do the work of Christ, we will often face persecution. Satan is not happy with the work that we are doing. But secondly, the accusations that are thrown against us are patently false. Paul and his companions were not making and causing an uproar. The slave girl was, but that is somehow conveniently forgotten, and the truth is turned on its head, and the truth becomes a lie, and the lie becomes the truth. And we see that happening in the world. On the other hand, there is an interesting little legal point that in Rome, certain religions were recognized and accepted, and others were not. So Judaism was accepted, religio licita, but Christianity, being something slightly different or very different to Judaism, was not classified as being legal. So it was a religio illicita. And so on those grounds, the magistrates could definitely hear the case. You don't get the feeling that Paul and his companions were asked to explain, I suppose because they were by default criminals, because they were advocating a religion that was illegal in a Roman territory. So they are thrown into jail. So, and we'll discover tomorrow how God rescues them. So remember, God is always with us. We've said that before. We may not understand what's happening to us. Remember the whole story of Job, but God is nevertheless with us, as we shall discover tomorrow with Paul and the companions. But just know that we face persecution for speaking the truth and speaking about the only one and true God. people just seem to react very negatively when you claim that kind of exclusive title to Jesus. Very strange, but it's the way the world operates. So folks, have a good day, and we'll chat again tomorrow. God bless.